So welcome to the Node.js Node API team meeting for June 16th, 2023. We'll follow our standard approach of going through the issues tag for milestone 11. Before we do that, does anybody have any announcements they'd like to make? Okay, if not, I think Kevin, I'll just mention Kevin is working on the next December version of Node add-on API to drop support for 14. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, I will go to the issues and then share my screen. So I should just share that. Okay, so improved score on the OpenSSF scorecard. So on that one, many thanks to Kevin, who figured out what was going on with the code QL issue, and we've got a bunch of now PRs, which I need to get on top of in terms of landing. And as we landed the PR to turn on a bunch of the recommendations. And then we can start to look at, improving it. So anyway, thanks to Kevin, big thanks to helping to get that move forward, and we'll continue to push on that. We already talked about if there's any new announcements. The next one, Nicola, who's let us know he's going to make it for a few weeks, is working on the list of non-C language bindings. I don't think there's any update on there. We don't have Jack this week, so I don't think there's necessarily an update on the driving towards full coverage, but I know he was working on adding in code coverage report, so that's a great step.
Sorry to interrupt. Gabriel is here. Yeah.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Let me find once I share. I don't find that it's easily. Participants. Thanks for
also,
sure.
Michael, for some reason, quality of your voice is seems like the computer busy doing something else. Like it's.
I see. Okay.
40 bit.
Let me see. There's something that's. Okay, I will just switch off where's the meeting information? There we go, settings, audio settings. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Okay.
Thank you.
You'll probably hear my mouse, my keystrokes now, but other than that, so okay, good. Okay, so I haven't done anything to enable debug testing, so I think that takes us to, we can look at the stale issues that we're working on.
Yeah, I start to work on this finalizer stuff.
Yep.
I pretty much made probably halfway through. One of the questions I have, what I see currently we have code quite changed from what we had before. Chengzhong, I have a question for you because you were the one who made all those changes. So now we don't have we don't use anymore the second pass from V8 because we do our own kind of queue, and we drain this queue in the end. So pretty much we call second pass as our own queue. My question is from what you understood, is it safe for us to call kind of finalizers which are just pure finalizers from the first pass, or we need to restore with second pass as it used to be before?
I think it's the point of the pure finalizer is to call users userland finalizer in the first pass with callback, right?
Right.
And all we need to do is that and maybe we can add another check in our in the Node API preamble to make sure that no Node API is being invoked during the pure finalizer, so that people won't get messy with the heap spaces.
Yeah, I have this check in my PR. I was just kind of wondering, like, if calling just C++ code from the first pass should be fine.
Yeah, I think
it
that's a point.
Yeah.
That's a point.
So one more thing. I haven't had a chance to look at your PR, but I'm thinking like, would it be possible to just set can run JavaScript to false, and then use like a different, like, because we have like env call finalizer, right? Or yeah, I think we have the env has a call finalizer method. So would it be possible to write a second one, like maybe call pure finalizer or something? Because then you don't create like a handle scope and so forth. And then you could set inside this call pure finalizer, you could set can run JavaScript to false. Then you call the finalizer, and then you set can call JavaScript to true. And then you can use the existing can call JavaScript thing to inform the add-on that it cannot run JavaScript, and then all those methods will just return pending exception or cannot run JavaScript if it's version 9 or newer. Is that a possible implementation?
Yes, it's exactly what I did before. And just to tell you that the current PR is something what I've done like a year ago. So thankfully it's I didn't update yet. I'm working on update, but what I'm seeing, like, it was a lot of changes since then, and so I'm trying to reconcile all this stuff. And yeah, it was exactly approach. As you remember, it's what we discussed year ago, like with you. I think it was your proposal as well.
Oh, okay.
It's exactly what I've done there.
Okay, sounds good then.
Right. Yeah, like yeah, I'm getting closer. Just kind of I'm kind of trying to reconcile like what if all kind of changes happened in this area. Yeah. Hopefully,
yeah, that sounds great. Thank you for covering it.
It took me much longer than I was expecting. Okay, let's move on next.
Okay. The next one was the number 119. So we captured our plan to basically change the default for flags that controls the uncaught exceptions policy, and that you can, and then document that you can add a listener. So that would be another one. I don't know if anybody's had a chance to take a look at that.
Sorry, I didn't get a chance. Yeah.
Okay. Then the next one was the 19. So I was just waiting on a documentation step, and today waiting on release of Node add-on API. So I guess we were waiting on a new release of Node add-on API to
last minute check. Node add-on API v7 has been released already.
Okay. So basically we're ready to move forward is the.
Oh,
yeah.
cool, great. Then I can start publishing the example, right?
Yes.
Sweet.
I'm just looking at.
Probably the tag is being missed, but I found that the npm package has been released, has been published.
Okay, npm. Right, okay, so but maybe we need to just sync with Kevin. If we may in our list of things to do missed a step, or maybe it's.
I can check the commit on which it's based to make sure that crash prevention thingy is in place, and then I can make my decision whether to proceed with the example based on that.
Yeah, I'm more like, hey, if we miss something in doing the release that we should close the loop on, right?
I wonder how this release has been created over there. Should we just write article or is it created automatically?
I think like you, there's a, I'd have to look at the. So we closed. Let's just see. Right, okay. Okay, so maybe that's. I guess maybe this is still. Okay, I'm just going to. Maybe I'll ask that, and then maybe there's a PR that's waiting to do that. But I don't see it, so I'm just gonna reopen that too, just to see. Okay, so, but yeah, so back to our original discussion, which is made. Okay. Sounds great. And then that's just an addition of sample repo, but I know, Lamir, you got lots of other stuff going on, so. Anything else? I guess.
Actually,
Sorry,
can
go
we
ahead.
discuss a bit about this?
Sure.
I didn't make progress on it, but one of the kind of thing was actually the question. Original question was the user had about this example. It's how to make how to implement some functionality inside of Node API, which they previously used to be able to do using object template. And one of the examples was they could provide the same function, and this function can be used for multiple properties, for multiple methods. So technically, inside of this function, they can get a function name. And so my proposal was actually we can simply implement it using JavaScript proxies, and we have example implemented for Node API, and which it was whatever was just missing just for C++ Node API. But lately, I kind of was speaking with Hermes team, and they were saying like using proxies to wrap up some native objects in some situations will maybe not the best from performance point of view, because many kind of JavaScript engines don't have highly optimized proxy implementations, which begs the question: would be do we want to consider adding new Node API which would allow us to create proxy-like native objects, but which may be optimized potentially by different JavaScript engines? So, for example, in V8, it can be done on top of object template. In Hermes, they have their own native object implementation. If JavaScript engine does not support it, then we can use proxies.
It sounds to me like in terms of compatibility, it's okay, because in the worst case, whichever engine doesn't have the native functionality for it will end up creating a proxy object where the property access handler is written natively, right? And yes, it will not perform well, but it does perform well on other engines, and it is not impossible to make on any given engine, given that we can just create a snippet of JavaScript that, you know, creates the proxy object. So I don't see this as like fundamentally impossible, right? It's not a fundamental thing that the engine has to provide, because it has to provide it because of the spec, right?
Right.
Right. So then it comes to like how broad an issue is it? Like, is it worth expanding the support surface for Node API in this particular case? Right. That's the second question.
Yeah, it's a main question. Like, does it make sense to add support for proxy-like objects to Node API in hopes that maybe some JavaScript engines may have more optimized way to implement them? Like, we know for sure V8 can do it, Hermes can do it. If JavaScript engine can do it, they have proxies anyway, so we can just simply, it will be just interface to these proxies. But technically, it's not completely proxy. It's more like, can we define JavaScript objects in native code, proxy-like native objects? Is that just kind of some vague question?
Yeah, it's one of those ones, like, for me, it would be like, how complicated, how much extra maintenance, and how often will people really need that extra performance, right? Like,
from what I'm seeing lately, like talking with different people who implement kind of working with JavaScript engines, like performance, every time we talk about performances and we cross the boundary between JavaScript and native code, it's super critical. Even in some cases, maybe not big deal, but you always find some scenarios, people creating hundreds or thousands of different 3D objects or something like this. People using JavaScript for so interesting applications lately.
right, but we've always said we're like the 80% case. So it's like, if that's a 1% case, maybe it's not as important as if it's a 30% case or 50%, right? You know, that's because I think that's the trade-off, right? Like, every new feature we take, we have more complexity. So we want to try and keep the surface small. So if it's like, you know, that's the trade-off. I don't know in this one what the answer is yet, but it's kind of like, we don't want to add everything under the sun, but we do want to add, like, you know, Gabriel's working on the PR for the Spring optimization, because I think we've looked at that and said, well, that's probably a common enough case that it's worth having some extra methods. And it's pretty simple, right? Like, it's not going to be a big amount of code. The similar question would be related to this one, right? If it's a small amount of code, pretty simple, then it's probably worth it. If it's a huge amount of complex code, then, you know, that'd make it a tougher choice.
Okay. Yeah, I can explore complexity of it, but what I'm here, like, yeah, it's a good criteria to say yes. Let me explore how complex a solution could be.
And as sort of prior art, you know, the get module file name, it took us years to do it, and you know, people asked for it like 2 or 3 times before we actually did it. So yeah, we do have some inertia, some of which is intentional. So, you know, if this ends up having inertia, that doesn't mean we're not going to do it at all. It just means that we need to see enough demand.
Right. Yeah, it was a lot of different requests in this area. We always kind of dodged them before. So thankfully, we definitely have requests from the community about such APIs.
Yeah,
and
like,
just knowing
obviously
that
this was driven. This one, the work you were, you know, the example was driven by somebody saying, hey, how do I do this? So yeah,
right. And what I'm hearing, like, if people need to have this proxy-like objects, and if proxy is not performant, because there is a lot of overhead, I understand, in implementation of proxies, and it's relatively new, and people didn't spend so much time implementing them, doing all this perform optimizations and stuff. So, like, for example, from Hermes team, I heard, like, it's areas that they didn't really spend too much time on. And if it will become like one of the primary interface in some cases, it could definitely kind of lose performance.
So for what it's worth, I mean, this is a new addition to the API, right? So,
Yes.
you know, most solutions will not be using this, you know, like most of the popular Node API add-ons will already have some sort of way of like creating objects using, you know, an API defined properties or you know, defined class, or, you know, one of the existing ones basically. So if we add this, you know, adoption, yes, it will happen, but, you know, it should not affect the ecosystem too much. It'll just be like, you know, now there's another solution, and you can, you know, you can weigh the benefits versus the cons for yourself. And, you know, add-ons may decide to migrate to this solution, or they may decide not to, right?
Right.
So it should be gradual, even if we provide it. I don't think it'll be like earth-shaking.
Yes, you're right. It's not replacing existing behavior or something. It's totally new API. It's just kind of different way how we can expose native objects, if you like. I don't know. It's good or bad. Like it's more like it's just different and something. What I thought.
Yeah, I think it's hard to it's hard to sort of gauge ahead of time, right?
Yeah.
I would support the new API if it can fit in the semantics of the proxy, since it doesn't expand our scope to be compatible with various engines.
Excuse me, Chenjon, you said you like this idea or not? So I didn't catch it. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I support the idea to add the new API.
Oh, cool. Thanks.
Yeah, I also kind of like it.
Yeah. Let me explore it a bit, because I have, as you know, like one of my scenarios is using Node API. It's inside of React Native, and React Native we using Hermes, and in Hermes they have this native. They're using effectively not they're using this GSI stuff, and this native objects is a part of the whole with Hermes and stuff. And at this point, I simply have no direct way to implement it efficiently. And I was considering to add just some extension APIs, but as we're adding this extension APIs, maybe I was wondering maybe it's worth to consider to adding to this to the core Node API as well. Cool, thank you.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, so let's flip over now and look at. Oh no, yeah, we can look at. So these we can kind of, I think, ignore as just things that we can probably land as long as they pass the CI. Go ahead.
I probably like to mention the one 1327.
Yep.
Yeah, currently we are building the test add-ons in the Node add-on API repo with our own common .GUI, which means it seems like it differs from the common add-on setups, since most of the add-ons are compiled with the common GAPI shipped with the node.js binary. So in our CI, the add-ons, the test can be compared with the node.js v16, but it may be it can fail on with other add-ons that compare with the shipped common GPI. So I'm wondering that maybe we need to compile the test with the node.js shipped common API as well, so that we can cover this, cover the default settings shipped with node.js.
Right, so you're saying we do the compiles with C++ 17, even though the default would be 14?
Yeah, the default is 14 when it is node.js v16.
Right. So yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense, and that, because otherwise we could depend on things that won't compile, right?
Yeah,
I don't understand why though. Like we only depend on a C API. We don't depend on anything from Node other than Node API, which is written in C. So the fact that we're using a different standard in Node add-on API should still be okay, right? Because the code, we're not using any C++ interfaces from Node.
No,
so I
but
don't quite understand.
In Node add-on API, we could introduce code in our stuff that depends on having C++ 17.
yeah,
But
exactly.
it's a reasonable expectation that for 16 that you can use 14.
Oh,
Yes,
I see. Okay.
Yes, that's the point.
Oh, I see. So let me see. Let me try to see if this scenario is valid. So let's say somebody wants to migrate from NAN to Node add-on API. Now, not only do they have to do that, but they also have to migrate from C++ 14 to C++ 17, and we do not wish this additional burden on them. Is that fair?
Well,
Yeah, that's the point.
Even there could be existing add-ons which work today because and they depend on they use C++ 14 and that's all they provide. And today we work because we don't use any C++ 17 features. But if we updated, we changed the code in Node add-on API to depend on something in C17, we could actually break an existing add-on with an update.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, I understand.
So I think it does make sense that like we should probably keep the lowest, like the C++, the features that we depend on to be the lowest that of that matches the lowest LTS that we support, basically.
Okay, sounds good.
14.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Yeah, to me it sounds like using string view as a return parameter is quite dangerous. I would say it's not just even not about like a C++ 14 versus 17, but more like for kind of more safety. I would say returning to string in this context will be probably more prudent. Module name, file name is not always big, and people probably not use this APIs that often. So using toString will be probably preferable choice in this context.
Yeah,
The string view does not own a buffer, right? Like it's if buffer disappears, it could be kaboom.
Except it should disappear because go ahead, Chan. I was just going to say that.
Sorry. Yeah, I checked the core implementation. The string, the returned character string is constant, and alive when the add-on is still alive. So basically, the add-on doesn't need to copy the string if it doesn't need to modify the string, the container of the string.
Yeah, if core guarantees it to be constant, then you're right. Like returning const char would be also reasonable.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. The reload is a constant character, constant char. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so that answer, like, I think everybody's on the same page that we should avoid using something from C++17. The other question, I guess, Chenzong, is would our testing have caught this? I think the answer is no, since all the tests seems to have passed, right?
Yeah, that's a point of since the test didn't catch this kind of
So do you have an idea
yeah.
of how we fix that?
I need to verify it if we can do the similar things with the node.js.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, if you can think about that and like maybe even we could add it as part of this this PR would be good. I guess it doesn't need to be part of this PR, but like
Yeah, it doesn't need to be part of this PR.
but doing something to close that gap so that we don't, it's great you caught it, but it would be nice if the test would just fail and
Yeah.
What if JIP allows you to pass explicitly flavor of C++? Because most compilers they do have special compiler flags and which you want to use.
It's kind of awkward. If you can, if Michael, you can,
Sure.
would you mind open the link in my comment?
oh sure.
It's the
This one here.
yeah exactly. It's not so easy since there are several places you have to set the C++ flavors for each platform, one for the Linux and for the Mac, and for if you can search the 14, and you might get 3 places here. Yeah.
Right. So basically we'd have to move at least those things into the GYP file for that we use for the add-on testing.
Yeah, exactly. So the easiest way will be included the common GPI shipped with node.js. So it would work for us.
Okay.
No, I'm surprised. I thought. Oh, wait. Let me see if I understand this correctly. Node.js by default includes the add-on GP from Node, but it doesn't include the common GP, right? And so you want to add the common GP as well. Am I getting that?
Correct me if I'm wrong. The common GIP is included by default, right? If not, then
Yeah, this looks like, this is our binding.jip for the node add-on API. So it does include actually common.gpy is probably up here though.
Yeah. I'm talking about nodes, right? Because like when you run node JIP, then it takes the binding JIP and it adds add-on GYPI from node, right? And so I think what we want is to not only add add-on GYPI. That's why I call it JIPy. It's just a lot faster. So that's what that's why I think we want to also add the common GP, not ours, but nodes, right? That's what Changzhong is saying. Because
yeah.
It sounds like it doesn't get added by default.
Okay. So, well, I thought it was added by default. Then that's my.
We have this line here, which says -- common.gypi, but that's I can't. What I'm
that's
I can't
ours.
find that here.
Yeah, that's ours, not the one shipped by
Right.
Node.js.
I'm just trying to find that to see what it includes.
Yeah, I think you'd have to run node JIP with like verbose, and then you would see which things are getting included by default from Node. And then Node has its own common GP, and then that one probably isn't getting included.
I
Yeah, and
can
I think
confirm. I can confirm this later if when I add the 14 CI C++ 14 CI check.
Okay. This one. Okay, so this one we could probably remove the do not land, although maybe we should wait until there's a release done just out of. This one, Gabriel, I see you opened. I think you've discovered that our tests have some interaction.
yeah, basically, we have two different tests, both of which use the set instance data, and they just happen to pass, but they should really be running in their own process because set instance data is kind of a common resource. So
Right.
that's why I changed the way they run.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't had a chance, but to take a look, but that definitely makes sense. So that's good.
Oh, and it also fixes a workaround. Like in one of our tests, I think forget the object wrap. I think, yeah, object wrap function. We were storing something in like a global static variable just to avoid using set instance data, but that sort of goes against our whole
Sure.
philosophy of context-aware add-ons and all that. So this also fixes that.
Okay, good. Anything else in the Node add-on API side of things? So actually, I guess you could look and see if there's any here in terms of issues that we should discuss about. This one, I don't know if there's been some discussion. So I guess, Gabriel, you've been chiming in on this one. Anything worth discussing on that, or?
We haven't had anything going on with that, but
Okay.
yeah, I'll have to look into it some more.
Okay, so you've basically been working to answer the question and.
Oh, yes. Now I remember. Yes. It's basically like there is no way to test this because it's really hard to. Yeah. Okay. So here's the crux of the matter. If you define a property in JavaScript and you give it a getter and a setter, afterwards, when you get the definition of the descriptor, which you can in JavaScript, there's a method for it. It returns the getter and setter. So you can call the getter and setter intentionally with the this property set to some other object to test whether it works on like non-objects, and then it should fail, right? That's what we want for native. But unfortunately, if you define a property with a getter and setter on the native side, then when you try to retrieve the descriptor, you don't get the reference to the two functions that you passed on the native side, and so there is no way to test it, meaning to cause a call to the property with an object other than the one on whose prototype it's defined. So, so even if we add the protection of a signature, there is no way to test that the protection is working.
Okay, so this is basically a case of native not quite being as JavaScripty as one might like.
At least not on V8.
Right. Right, and you could build it, I see. Okay, so basically it sounds like you've kind of answered the question there. So, okay, currently developing a project. Right, I guess it's just a question on how to keep objects alive. So I think I don't know that we need to discuss it now, but if anybody has a chance to think about it, that's the one that's waiting on an answer.
I think this one makes sense. Like we should add like an engine's greater, greater or equal 16 or some equivalent to that.
Right. I'm thinking, is there any, yeah. Okay. Anybody have any, yeah, it makes sense to me, off the top of my head. Here, I'll ask if they're up for a PR, otherwise that's something we can think about, but okay, anything else on the Node add-on API side that we should talk about this week? Not, I'm just flipping over to here where I'll just go to. And maybe I did want is open. Sorry. Right, okay. This one.
I think this one's ready to go. So
Yep.
Vladimir's nomination has passed now since it's been over a week without any objections. But unfortunately, I don't think I can onboard him because I don't have the privileges anymore to add people to collaborators. So I was wondering, Michael, if you
Sure.
could do it.
Yeah,
Thank you. Appreciate it. Oh,
Yeah, awesome.
yeah, well, thanks for all your hard work, so.
Absolutely, Vladimir. You totally deserve it.
So yeah, I'll reach out to you tomorrow or probably Monday and we can figure out a time to go through the onboarding.
right. Thank you.
Sounds good. Right, so I think this is based on the discussion around the order of these.
Yep, that should fix the warning.
But I think Chenzong, this is like you're adding a test. You're changing the test to validate that we don't get the error, or
Yeah, I test verify that it locally doesn't want the redefinition anymore. But
okay.
with our discussion thread on the original issue, I'm wondering probably we can also go with the alternative method to rename the API version defining the node version Deutsch, since it is not used by any node API add-ons anyway.
Right, okay. So if it seems like, yeah, to be safe, we should still mark it as Sember major. But it's pretty unlikely that it's going to affect anything, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. This test, this other change still makes sense though, right? Or is it that we'd leave it and that would actually fix it?
Honestly, the node Deutsch is being included in the node test fixtures already.
Okay.
So this line is purely for suppressing the warnings. So if we can rename the API version definition node version Deutsch, then this change doesn't need it anymore.
Okay, and we don't have the problem in earlier node versions, so like we don't need a PR to backport or anything, do we?
We still got the warnings in other LTS lines as still, since if we rename the API version macro, then if it's a some major change, then it will not be backported. So yeah,
Right.
this PR can disable the warnings in older LTS lines.
Right, that's where I'm like, we should probably just land this then, and this can be backported. And
Yes.
the other change will then fix it, you know, so that, because I think the way it is now, there's a bit of a risk that if somehow it is redefined, you know, people can end up being upgraded to the wrong version or whatever, right? So.
Yes, sounds great.
Okay. Okay. So back. Right, we talked, okay, so we've already talked about this one, I think, then it seems like we're agreed and go ahead and do that. This one I don't think is new, but so I think that takes us to the end of issue. Any other ones that we should discuss this week?
I have one that I just
Yeah.
realized over the course of the last few weeks. Now that we have this runtime version check, you know how in like when we load add-ons, we add like one instantiation or one specification of specialization of the template every time we release a new version of Node API. There is one other implication now, which is that in our tests, we now have like, you know, if you know, run the test with an API version X and then run it with experimental, right? And when we release a new version, we set it to that version and so forth, right?
Yep.
One thing I realized is that the number of add-ons that we build during these tests will also have to keep increasing with time as we add behavior that affects one test or another, because otherwise we lose our forward compatibility. So if somebody's set to NAPI version 9 and we're on NAPI version 15, and we no longer run the test with NAPI version defined as 9, then we are no longer making sure that those people who are still using 9 continue to have the behavior. So I don't know if we should document that somewhere so that, you know, the tests, we no longer just replace it. They sort of trail off.
Right, I definitely think that we should have, like, because we, in the doc that was put together that said, hey, here's what we should do, we should have something that is like, well, what is the step there? Because as we add, if like cutting a new one means that we shift the testing to that new one, we should add the testing for the old one as well.
Yeah, that's right. We must not replace it, but rather sort of extend it.
Right. It's kind of like we should be running the baseline tests on like 8 and then adding new tests to test things that are different, which are different with 9 and 10 and 11, or
yeah, exactly. So basically what we've done so far is if we add like a new API, let's say to strings, right? Then what we would do is we would go to the test string subdirectory, and in the C file for it, we would simply place an API experimental in front of include JS native API.h. But that is no longer an option because we have to run it. We have to run that test with like 3 different versions, right? We have to run it with 8. We have to run it with 10, let's say, and then we have to run it with experimental. So now we are building 3 add-ons, and the corresponding test.js has to take that into account, and so forth. And these versions are just going to keep accumulating as time goes on. Hopefully not too many, but basically we can no longer be destructive in that we just simply say, okay, it's experimental, because experimental includes everything that has come to date.
Right. Right. And do we have a good way of doing that already?
Yeah, we are
Yeah.
doing that. As soon as Vladimir added this ability, some of the tests, they sort of split into two.
Right.
The experimental version and the established version. And so what I'm saying is, it's not just two versions now, the established and the experimental. It's the established plus n, the established plus n plus 2, etc., and then the experimental. So it's going to start sort of getting inflated like that with every behavior change that we make.
Right.
But only with behavior changes.
Right. So basically with those, like when we promoted it to, so his PR added in, so we now ran testing with 8 and experimental, right? When we cut the version that includes that, it should now run with not experimental, but it should start running with, 8 and 10, right? Say.
Exactly.
And then if we add something new, it should run with 8, 10 and experimental.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah. Right. So it's kind of like we need to make sure that whenever we add something that makes a change like that, we add testing with experimental. And yeah, I mean, I think we still think that these are going to be a smallish number. So hopefully that doesn't mean that we're running all tests with all sorts of different versions, but it will.
Exactly,
you're right,
yeah.
that it will build up. I don't know if we need anything in our instructions. The instructions probably already say convert those tests from experimental to run with Node API version X, right? In addition.
Yeah. Only now, you must keep the old ones around. So when we, so the thing is, if experimental means we've added new APIs, then it's okay to overwrite because you're still testing the old behavior. But if experimental means the behavior has changed, then it's no longer okay to overwrite. Then you have to copy the test over to the released version and add a new version of the test with experimental. So the copying only needs to happen to those tests which have had behavior modifications since the last release, rather than just new API additions.
Right. So that, I guess that is, the question I think you're starting with is like, have we properly documented that in our instructions for doing a release?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll have to have a look at that.
Okay.
And make sure that that's documented, because it's like you have to get the concept right.
Yep. Yeah, no. Okay. So that's important. Thanks for thinking about that. And maybe you can let us know next time if it's okay, or we need to do something there, or maybe you'll have a PR, who knows? Yeah.
I'll take a look. Okay. Just wanted to run it by everybody to make sure that I'm not hallucinating.
No, we definitely need, like, if we've changed the behavior of 6, if we've changed the behavior of a method X, X needs to be tested for the 8 and above for every version where we've made a behavior change.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, any other things we should discuss? Okay, if not, well, thanks for everybody's time and work, and we will see you in GitHub next time.
Yep, talk to y'all later.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye-bye.